Hello, everybody. Now, just so you know, when I do these, I do them off the top of my head. I don't have any pages or scripts in front of me, so excuse my ums and uhs and whatnot. And I'm doing this low budget, so also excuse the mild audio. But I am trying to get the truth out and the information out the best that I can, and hopefully I grow as time goes on. Moving on, this story, or the lack of the story that's blowing up in the media, should tell you how crooked the media is sometimes. We have this huge domestic terrorist attack in Japan, right? And yes, it went among all the same or a similar time as the I want to say the Gilroy Garlic Festival shooting happened, and that might have trumped it. But I mean, this is huge comparatively. This is one of the biggest terrorist attacks that have ever happened in Japan, period. And it happened to an animation studio that a lot of people are familiar with called Kyoto Animation. Now, it bothers me that a lot of people aren't blowing this story up. This is a really big story. And I know it didn't happen in America, but it's still very, very important. It just, to me, it shows you one, yes, this stuff can happen anywhere. Two, uh, yeah, I know I jump on the gun bandwagon a lot, but I do like Anime, all right? One of my first businesses were anime. I get into that in like a business talk later. I don't want this always to be about guns and stuff, but a lot of my opinions are on the First and Second Amendments and other rights. And this way that the media filters, right? You barely hear about this stuff. The animation community talked about it a little bit, but even some of the biggest anime YouTubers that I know haven't really mentioned or talked about it too much. If they, I'm sure they mostly all of them know about it, but they don't feel strongly enough about it to speak up too much. They either made like a dedication video, right? Like doing some type of dance or a shout out to Kyoto Animation, or they did something, talking about what you can do to help. But it just got washed away so fast, so quickly. I don't think, like to Japan, this is almost like a 9/11 for them. And yes, only 30 people died. So it was 30 people, 33 people, I believe, died. I believe over 30 more were injured. They lost a really big director. If you're familiar with anime at all, the director, I believe, was the one who did Kobayashi's Dragon Maid and Lucky Star and some other stuff as well. But if you're not too familiar with Kyoto Animation, but you like anime, like, right, you're familiar with anime, you would know them for Clannad, which is very reminiscent of my life. A little too much, and which is bad because I don't want to spoil it, but it's kind of a sad anime. Once you watch the second part of it. So you have Clannad. They're known for the Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya, Dragon Maid. I think I mentioned that, Dragon Maid and Lucky Star, Violet Evergarden. They're known for the slice of life anime that really hits you in the feels. I mean, that's just really what they're known for. Beautiful animation, strong, and the guy who did the arson supposedly he believed that they plagiarized him, that they stole his work. So it was a revenge. Whether he was, I don't know if he was right or wrong. That doesn't justify killing all those people. I believe it was 20. Like most of the people who died were women, but and of course this older director. But still, it's tragic, and to think that we would wash that away because it's not here. It also, I just really get bothered. I get really bothered. I mean, I did do some ranting about Japan. And I'm not. I want to make it very clear. I ranted about Japan a couple episodes ago because I don't have anything against Japan. If anything, I would be a bit of a weeb back in the day. What they call a weeaboo, basically a Japanese wannabe. But the thing is, it's not that I have anything against Japan. It's not that I think America is the best country in the world. For some people, other countries might be better for them. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, when I bring up things like that, like I said, Japan was basically a xenophobic island, right? That's not very diverse, and I don't believe everybody in Japan is xenophobic. I don't believe that all Japanese people hate foreigners, but I believe overall you're going to find they're less welcoming to having other cultures come to Japan like that, right? That's not what Japan is built on, like America is. You're going to find that Japan isn't really like, let's say if you move there and you're a foreigner, people might not want you there because they're like, nope, no foreigners in my building, no foreigners in my apartment. I don't like foreigners. You're not going to really find that in America like that, is what I'm saying. If you go to a shop, certain stores or certain, you want a certain service, they might be like, nope, don't want a foreigner here. Sorry, you're foreign. You can't come in here, right? This is for Japanese men only or Japanese women only, that kind of stuff. You'll find that in Japan, right? Or, even certain sexist things like men only, women only. They have that kind of thing. They can be a little more misogynistic in Japan. That you're not going to find that level in America. And my issue is when people say America's like that and they say no other civilized country is, right? When they say America's like, we're xenophobic, we're racist, we're whatever, and we're misogynistic, and when they say no other country is, they no other civilized country, right? No other first world. Are you saying Japan's not a first world country? I believe it is. I believe they're very advanced, and if you really look at it, they almost have relatively no crime. And this is because this is just how Japan is. Japan, they're mostly a peaceful people, but they are very harsh on their citizens. I'm not going to pretend they're not. And this is, even regardless of the fact that they're harsh on their citizens, this is something that can happen if somebody decides they want to spaz. It wasn't a foreigner. It was a Japanese guy. It wasn't I don't want to say like it wasn't racial. He felt like he was plagiarized according to the story. So as the case, and he kills all those people, you have to accept at a certain point that there is just evil in the world. And yes, it's rare over there. It's very rare. I'm not saying that this is gonna happen more often. I hope it doesn't. But sometimes these things have copycats, and apparently, it was effective. If somebody wants to spaz and break down like that, I mean, they can start installing sprinklers. If you're not familiar with Japan, they're not required to have sprinklers in their buildings, and they're not really required to have. A lot of even buildings don't even have like insulation and stuff. So, there's more things are more made out of like paper, and they don't have the same. It's not built the same way. Things aren't built the same way they are in the United States. So, that being said, maybe they can go into that, but why would you do if that was the only incident? And that, I think, that's an issue that we have across the board in like all these different countries, right? We have one horrible incident, and then we attempt to, even if it's a lot of incidents, even if it's a few handfuls of incidents, right? So 10 incidences, let's say there's 9 more of these in Japan. They're not, attempts or whatever. They're similar, but then there's 9. So in their entire history since World War II, right, there's been relatively no violence from World War II. They have 9 more instances of these crazy people doing something like that. If they do, it will still be weird because there's over 120 million people in Japan. So 9 out of 120 million people, 9 of them do something crazy. You're going to change the entire structure of the country. I don't think they're going to jump to do that, but that's kind of how we act in all these other countries, right? Like we have bombings in Sri Lanka, and then they try to alter their whole situation with the country. We have one little incident in India, and then they alter all this stuff going on in the country. One little incident in New Zealand, a couple handfuls in America, true, but the thing is, we have issues. All the countries are going to have issues. There are murders in Japan. There are murders in different countries. There are murders in England. They're just more isolated. They're more person on person, usually. Sometimes somebody goes psychotic, and I've heard that there's this guy who like killed a whole spa full of people, like a family that owned a spa or whatever, and like just went on a killing spree. It happens, but this is one of the biggest things there was in Japan, and it was barely touched on. Keep that in mind. Like we jumped all over New Zealand when something happened there, but in Japan something happens, and it's way more rare than what happens in New Zealand or what happened in New Zealand. But because it was racially motivated, we cared more. I think we need to stop. I do believe that the motivation matters so we can prevent these kind of things in the future, right? But the issue is we didn't address the motivation when it came to I think the New Zealand shooter, the prime minister. She didn't address the motivation. She just addressed the tool he used to do it. It just doesn't fly with me. It's weird. It's really weird. I do believe we need to address the motivations of why these people are doing stuff like this. Um, Maybe have better security. I heard the guy was running around pouring gasoline and lighting fire and screaming die and die, and that's, I don't know. It's just weird. I know you can't have a weapon in Japan. You couldn't just like take the dude out. But honestly, in Japan, I think most people feel safe enough not to have a weapon. But I also think, honestly, there's a certain time where it is okay not to murder, but just to stand up for like when things are getting a little ridiculous. And in Japan, things have gotten ridiculous. People work themselves to death and commit suicide. Uh, and the suicide rate is high. And I feel like a lot of people feel trapped. And I think that's going across the board in all of the world. A lot of people are feeling trapped and they're acting erratic. And whether they're all got all their marbles or not, the point is it needs to be addressed. There's always been people without their marbles, and they haven't been doing this. That's something that needs to be pointed out. Um, there's always, when you have people of different colors and they do it, it's either, oh, it's religiously motivated, oh, it's because of their race. But, when a particular group does it, and I don't want to make it racial, I'm just saying when certain people do it, the only defense people have is, well, it's a mental issue, no, or it's the video games, and they try to blame all these different things, and whatever catch the blame is what people try to they try to put a patch on it, this little fake band-aid to act like they did something, and by taking away somebody's rights momentarily. It's stupid and it doesn't help. Because in their bank, and if they were a betting person, honestly, in my opinion, in Japan, right, any country, when these incidents happen, because they've been happening everywhere. You should hear about what's been happening over in South Africa, where people are been attacking white farmers, and you don't really hear about that. Now, are they justified in doing that? I'm not getting into that. It's just that should be a story that more people know about, but they're not bringing it up. I heard, and just to show you, I'm not like a mouthpiece for Republican or Fox News. I watched the dude on Fox News belittle what one of the radical people, and this is a radical guy. He's crazy, he's unhinged. I don't think he's doing anybody any favors. He's like an evil version. He's like an evil African version of Malcolm X. But basically, the guy was like, okay, they're hiring Jewish people to snipe us, right? They're hiring Jewish people to tell them how to snipe us. And he's like, oh, look at him being anti-Semitic. I'm like, no, he was telling the truth. They were hiring ex-Israeli military forces, like Israeli forces, ex-Israeli forces, to train the people in South Africa to kill the Africans. That now, whether they were killing them for invading their land was a different story. Whether they, you can debate that depending on what side of the fence you sit on. Maybe they're being trained for defending themselves, or maybe they're being trained to like take this terrorist group out, to snipe out the terrorist group. Maybe they were doing both. But they definitely had Jewish people over there training them, or Israeli. However, if you're saying the word Jewish is anti-Semitic, that's different. But no, they definitely had people from Israel over there training them to kill the black people. Um, that's that's how it was. Now, were the black people assaulting them? Yes. And so, if you want to debate whether it was self defense or it was like, okay, this is going to be a proactive solution to not losing their land, because the issue they were facing was the government and the Africans had got basically sick of how the imbalance that was left over from apartheid, so they decided to take matters in their own hand and started attacking the white owners who basically inherited all the even though apartheid ended a couple decades ago, uh, the power balance didn't shift anywhere, and especially economically. So a lot of these white farm owners, they have a lot of land from their parents who benefited from apartheid and grandparents or whatever, and these people, who are the country in this country, they're basically screwed and stuck working for them for little to nothing. I know this is getting so far off of the anime topic, but the point is this: there's all these things going on in the world, and we only tend to pay attention to the stuff that fits a particular narrative that we want people to hear. The news. That's nothing new, but I don't know. I guess it kind of hit me as a surprise that like Japan, like something happened in Japan, and we just didn't even bother. We barely bothered to say anything. They said something, like they said it in passing, like you would say, like, okay, two little girls got shot in Detroit, right? Like it said in passing. The news might, acknowledge it nationally, but then it just kind of gets blown away when this is probably one of the biggest events, in my opinion, that has happened in Japan. And like I said, almost 80 years, 70 years. Um, it's insane. It's insane how cherry picking we are, or the mainstream media is. This is why you need to support. I'm not saying me necessarily. I know I'm a small channel. I barely got any episodes up. I don't even have face on most of these videos. But still, you need to support your more. I don't want to say like it's not left or right wing, but basically your more genuine, smaller news sources who don't have their strings tied to bigger media companies. For example, Vox has their strings connected to MSNBC, right? The Young Turks, they have their strings tied to CNN. Basically, this is just the way it is. Um, I'm sure Fox has their claws in uh, the Blaze or Ben Shapiro or something like that. Do they really? I don't know, but to me, it seems like they do. They do. If not him, then at least Milo. Yeah, I don't know how to say his freaking last name, but you get my point. All these different people, the media chooses what you want to hear. Facebook chooses what they want you to hear. YouTube chooses what they want you to hear. Google, the same company. And then you have Instagram. They're owned by Facebook, same company. And then Twitter. They choose what they want you to hear. So if they all want you to hear the same thing, and they block out stuff like one of the biggest tragedies that ever happened in Japan, because I didn't hear about it. Almost nobody I know heard about it. That's insane. That is insane. Everybody should know about that, just like they knew about what happened in New Zealand. Everybody should have. Period. Period. Thanks for tuning in. God bless you. Have a great day.